Aging gracefully. What's the end game?
It's time for U.S. World Report. Here's Tom Osborne.
These are the stories making headlines this week. Puerto Rico officially raised the death toll from Hurricane Maria last year from 64 to nearly 3,000 following the release of a study ordered by the governor of the island. This officially makes Maria one of the deadliest storms in U.S. history. President Trump's push to put himself on the midterm ballot puts his style of politics everywhere, and potentially on the ballot too. In Florida, his handpicked candidate for governor, Republican Representative Ron DeSantis, launched the first day of his general election campaign by warning Florida that the last thing we need to do is monkey this up. His African-American opponent, Andrew Gillum, called it a bullhorn instead of a whistle call in racist politics, and said he took a page from the campaign manual of Donald Trump. Americans across the country are mourning the death of Senator John McCain, a presence in American politics for 30 years. A heroic veteran of the Vietnam War, he was captured and held as a POW where he was tortured for years. He became the Republican presidential nominee who was defeated by President Obama. In his defeat, he became an elder statesman and put his mark on the country as a major critic of President Trump's leadership, particularly his style toward racial politics. The government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo announced an outbreak of Ebola in the northwestern Equateur province. At first, the outbreak appeared to be confined to a remote area, but soon cases were confirmed in Madanka, a city of nearly 1.2 million people, heightening the risks of a more rapid spread of this highly contagious disease. An explosive document from a disgruntled archbishop has sent the Vatican into an uproar this week, just as Pope Francis has been trying to win back trust for the Catholic Church amid the ongoing sexual abuse scandal. Cardinal Pietro Parolin says accusations from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano created a great pain within the Vatican. In an interview Thursday with Vatican Insiders, a website close to Francis, Parolin declined to comment on the contents of Vigano's claims, repeating Francis' invitation to read it and judge. According to the University of Southern California, Americans are living longer. The average life expectancy in America today is higher than in any other period in history. More specifically, data from a United Nations report shows that the number of people 65 years and older rose from 8% to 12% of the total population between 1950 and 2000. What's more, this figure will rise by 20% by 2050 and is likely to continue rising steadily thereafter. This is largely due to significant improvements in healthcare services, investment in medical research, and universal health coverage. Which brings us to our story of the week, aging gracefully. What's the end game? Here's Dr. David Canervo, our resident historian and political scientist, to give us the backstory. David?
Thank you, Tom. Some people look forward to retirement in what are sometimes called the golden years, but others long for a fountain of youth, wanting to maintain their vigorous lifestyle forever. But there is no fountain of youth, and for many people the golden years are not so rich. Limited financial resources and declining health place restrictions on the ability of older people to truly enjoy the last several years of their lives. In the United States, it used to be the case that families would stay together in the same vicinity and the adult children would take care of their aging parents. Some built extra rooms or even apartments in their homes so that their parents could live with them for more supervision and reduce costs. But as more recent generations of Americans have become more mobile, parents have either had to follow their children to new states and cities, leaving behind what was familiar, or do the best they could on their own with whatever resources they had at their disposal. For some seniors, that means an enjoyable life of travel, hobbies, and relaxation. But for others who have fewer resources, it could mean a life of scrimping on their expenditures to just get by, and ultimately living out the remainder of their lives in a less than ideal nursing home. As we face an uncertain future for Social Security and Medicaid and the end of company pensions, future generations of Americans need to be planning for their golden years at an early age. Ken?
Thank you, David. Let's begin with this clip from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I've titled it From 6 to 93.
Dear 6-year-old, training wheels are for babies. Just let go already. Regards, a 7-year-old.
Dear 7-year-old, no matter what anyone says, stay weird.
Signed, an 8-year-old. Dear 8-year-old, find out your babysitter's weakness, then use it against them. Signed, a 9-year-old.
Dear 9-year-olds, don't get involved with the popular kids. They're narcissistic capitalists that know nothing about politics. Signed, a 12-year-old.
Dear 12-year-old, ask her to dance. Just trust me on this one. Signed, a 16-year-old.
Dear 16-year-old, don't let your mom throw away your Legos. Signed, an 18-year-old.
Dear 18-year-old, go easy on the makeup. You're not as ugly as you think. Love, a 19-year-old.
Dear 19-year-old, just because it's an all-you-can-eat buffet does not mean you need to eat all you can.
Your parents have better interest rates than your credit card. If he says he has a weekend home in the suburbs, he's married.
That rust protection undercoating, it's actually a great deal.
Whatever you do, never order the salad from a truck stop.
Back up your hard drive. Now.
I mean, who even does that?
Getting laid off can be a blessing in disguise.
Being a starving artist only works if you actually make art.
Always be kind to your family. You'll need each other when things get tough.
Stop panicking. Being a single mom is an incredible thing.
Dear 36-year-old, stop caring so much about what other people think. They're not thinking about you at all. Signed, a 47-year-old.
Dear 47-year-old, a midlife crisis does not look good on you. Signed, a 48-year-old.
Dear 48-year-old, always tell the truth, except when it comes to your online dating profile.
Dear 51-year-old, one cat is enough cats. Signed, a 53-year-old.
Dear 53-year-old, it's never too late to try something new.
I've decided to take my husband's Corvette and go to racing school. If Paul Newman could do it, why can't I?
Dear 72-year-old, spend all your money. Otherwise, your kids are going to do it for you. Sincerely, an 85-year-old.
Dear 85-year-old, indulge your sweet tooth. You'll need dentures soon anyway.
Dear 88-year-old, cultivate younger friends. Otherwise, yours will all die off. Sincerely, 91 years old.
Dear 91-year-old, don't listen to other people's advice. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Signed, a 93-year-old.
I like his advice the best of all. You know, when I was 18, Tom Osborne, I had a collection of Mad magazines given to me by my best friend, Robert Putnam. His father was the art director of Mad. And these dated all the way back to 1953. And one day I came home and my mom had thrown them all out. I've come to learn that they're worth thousands of dollars. Any advice from you, Tom?
Nothing but seek grief counseling. That's a terrible, terrible tragedy, knowing how Mad Magazine was very much a part of my life as well. One of the things that struck me about the roll-in, and I thought it was delightful, however, actually, is that it showed that as we grow older, we become more aware of life, and life awareness grows as it goes. On the other hand, the balance of that, the impact of death on our everyday lives is also a factor. And we can listen to both and change our life, make direction changes, major decisions. All and each one affects us as we grow older, but with more wisdom. Most people, including mental specialists, have failed to recognize the full significance of the impact of death in our life. And the reality of death, of course, arises as each child becomes aware of death's inevitability. So says Dr. Robert Firestone in Psychology Today. Firestone explains that it's too painful to face our personal mortality directly without protecting ourselves. Therefore, some form of defense formation against the painful realization of inevitable death becomes essential. Death awareness affects our lives in ways we may not be consciously aware of. As the roll-in we listened to suggested, our elders can give us good advice. And death awareness, in fact, many people would tend to deny their fear and say something like, I don't think about death very much. Nevertheless, the fear of our death influences fundamental aspects of our lives and motivates many of their actions. We develop defensive strategies to cope with emotional frustration and primitive feelings. When faced with death awareness, The same defenses are intensified. As we continue our defenses against pain and the experience causing it, we end up blocking out negative experiences and, sadly, the good ones too.
Dr. Canerva, what resonated with you?
I thought what was interesting is that as people got older, they had more freedom of decision-making. Like you, I kind of like the last person's advice, and that is don't pay attention to anybody. So that it seems to me that we have then the freedom at the end of our lives to do pretty much what we want to do. Ken?
From what I understand, Mickey Rooney lived a life very similar to that one woman that advised, spend all your money. I think when he left this plane, he had $1,100 in his bank account. Mary?
You're listening to U.S. World Report with Tom Osborne, Dr. David Canervo, Ken McCaleb, and Mary Saliba. And we'll be back right after these messages, so stay with us. Welcome back to U.S. World Report with Ken McCaleb, Dr. David Canervo, Tom Osborne, and Mary Saliba. Ken?
Thank you, Mary. This next clip is from Fox News, and it's advice from someone who seems forever young, Miss Christy Brinkley.
Hi, I'm Christy Brinkley, and you're watching FoxNewsMagazine.com. I became a vegetarian when I was 13 years old, and I've been all kinds of vegetarians. I've been macrobiotic, I've been vegan, I've been lacto-ichthyo, flexitarian, but the one thing that I've stuck with is that I have never, since the day I decided I did not want to be a part of the slaughterhouse system, I've never eaten fowl or red meat. And I figure, hey, if they're shooting a cow full of growth hormones in order to speed up its development and get it from birth to the slaughterhouse faster, what's it doing to you? You know? There's so much stress on women these days to feel like they have to be perfect. And you just don't have to be perfect. I really, as much as I'm saying here's ways to push the wrinkles aside or get rid of the wrinkles if it bothers you, I also want people to accept a certain amount of this stuff as inevitable and learn to love it. If you are freaking out and it bothers you, they've invented hair color and they've invented ways to get rid of the wrinkles. And I put that in the book, how to do it. Try and get exercise where you can, when you can. Don't get too rigid about it. Be flexible and make it fun, and then you'll stick with it. Don't do things that like don't diet. I call it denieting, because the second you're on a diet, you're focused on what you can't have. I try to do a shift so that you're thinking about what you can gift yourself and give yourself the gift of health.
David, obviously Christy Brinkley has written a book and it's been geared towards women. Will her suggestions work for men as well?
Well, I think so, Ken. And I think one of the best examples of that is former President Bill Clinton. During his White House years, he famously would go out jogging and stop at a fast food restaurant on the way home for a snack. After leaving the presidency, he had heart trouble, and I believe his heart bypass surgery was required. He became a vegetarian. He slimmed down, and in interviews has said that he feels the best he's ever felt. So I think certainly in his case, and I suspect others as well, who have followed a similar regimen of, if not becoming vegetarian, at least working out more, exercising more, that a lot of men will benefit from that as well. Ken?
Tom Osborne, isn't it best to work with your doctor to come up with an exercise plan matched in your health and fitness level? And remember that it's never too late to start, but how much exercise do people over age 50 really need?
Well, I come from a family of very active people, and my father, of course, was a runner, distance runner, and a walker all the way until his, let's say his 80s, and still was exercising in his 91. So I believe that a good 3 or 4 miles a day is the ideal of walking, and that's easy to do anywhere you live in most cases. And all healthy eating and sleeping and all the mental comforts that we have in life that give us a bright view and intellectual curiosity and ways of changing the world to make it better. Ken?
Well, Dr. Canervo, getting older definitely makes it more likely that you'll get osteoarthritis. And when the cartilage between your joints breaks down, it usually starts after age 40 and becomes more and more noticeable. Almost everyone gets it to some degree if they live long enough. My question to you, Doctor, is osteoarthritis a part of aging, and can I do anything after age 50 to avoid it?
Well, to my understanding, it is not something which is easily avoidable, that most people are going to have osteoarthritis to some degree. The question is how serious it is. Some have very mild cases, others much more serious cases. And I have known people who have had surgery. My sister-in-law had some of her fingers fused because of the arthritis in her fingers being so serious. I might add that that's a procedure she now regrets, but nevertheless, it is something which does happen to people. Fortunately, I'm someone who has very little arthritis in my joints. I think one way of trying to deal with it is through exercise, trying to keep up the muscles around the joints as strong as possible, and at the same time find medicines which are help to lubricate the joints.
Well, Dr. Canervo, as a follow-up question, the genes you inherited from your parents and your nutrition, can they also play a role?
Absolutely. Genes are a very strong determinative factor of a lot of characteristics within a human body, and certainly someone's joint health, osteoporosis, bone health, that sort of stuff is very much determined by genes as well. And you can see that as you look at different generations of family members. So it is important then to follow nutrition advice from doctors, whether it be taking calcium or other kinds of medicines to strengthen bones, to exercise joints. Those sorts of things that really are crucial to maintaining joint health. Ken?
So no need to worry if you find yourself stumped for a name or forget where you put the car keys. Tom Osborne, is memory loss a natural part of aging, and how much of this is normal?
I think it certainly is a part of aging, and I'm one witness who can attest to that. I do have my senior moments, but luckily this is not a permanent situation. It quickly adjusts itself as you slow down and concentrate on what you're doing. I think that basically the gene repairs that they're doing in people these days are so phenomenal. It makes you truly believe that these kinds of problems that we face will someday be a thing of the past. So I think genes are a major issue. I know they are in my family. For example, we have very long-lived family members. I have a great-great-great-grandfather who lived to be 112. And I have a picture of him listening to the radio on the front porch. Ken?
All right, Dr. Canervo, do sleep needs change as we age? I mean, how much do I need after age 50?
Well, I don't know that they change that much. I think most doctors recommend 8 to 9 hours, depending on one's activity level. But at the same time, you do need to get adequate sleep. Certainly, as one ages, the body starts to break down. Sleep is the time when the body tends to repair itself. And so certainly getting adequate sleep, probably at least 8 hours, is important after age 50. Ken?
Well, studies show that most sleep problems are not related to aging. Instead, it can stem from medical or emotional conditions that come on as we get older. Aging also affects our sleep-wake pattern. It makes us sleepier earlier in the evening and wakes us up earlier in the morning. You're listening to U.S. World Report with Tom Osborne, David Canervo, Mary Saliba, and Ken McCaleb. We're up against a hard break, but we'll be back right after these messages.
Welcome back to U.S. World Report. I'm David Canervo, along with Tom Osborne, Ken McCaleb, and Mary Saliba, and we're talking about aging gracefully. What is the end game? Ken?
Thank you, David. Here's an audio clip from the Plastic Surgery Channel. You know, I didn't even know there was such a thing, the Plastic Surgery Channel.
The world watched her grow up as Half Pint on the popular TV show Little House on the Prairie. But as she grows older, Melissa Gilbert says she wants to embrace aging. The actress is swearing off Botox and fillers and even removing her breast implants. She's one of the few in Hollywood saying no more to plastic surgery.
You will find every once in a while someone who is maybe looking to gain more media attention or something like that will make this drastic announcement that they're no longer going to embrace plastic surgery. And that's fine, to each her own.
Plastic surgeon Tiffany McCormick says what's right for Gilbert doesn't have to be the norm for every woman who hits 50. She says it's okay to gently turn back the clock using plastic surgery.
In this day and age, we have a lot of ways to do that very naturally without making people look pulled or plastic or fake.
Experts say that's what many women in this age category want. They don't want to roll back the decades of living. They just want a few tweaks. They just want to refresh and maintain a youthful appearance.
It's okay to have a little bit of gray hair. It's okay to have a few wrinkles, as a matter of fact. Some people may like more than others, but they don't need to look like a different person. They want to keep their identity.
Dr. William P. Adams Jr., who is the founder of the Plastic Surgery Channel, says for most people there is a desire to look good well into their 60s and even 70s. And he says it's possible to preserve with a healthy lifestyle and improving techniques in plastic surgery.
There's some very simple things that can be done using some very good techniques, both surgical and non-surgical.
Adams says it's important to communicate with your doctor about how much change you want and find a doctor who's willing to listen and help you reach your goals.
Most people in this era want to grow old, but grow old gracefully.
For the Plastic Surgery Channel, I'm Dawn Tongish.
Tom Osborne, do tell, while at ABC World News tonight, did any of the on-air talent go under the knife? Now, discreetly speaking, of course.
Don't tell. Let me just say that there were many people whom I knew who had some work done, but you'd never know it. A little bit here, a little bit there. I don't think anyone really went overboard. But I do think that plastic surgery is a very serious matter, too. In some cases, it's a miracle with life-changing accidents and healing psychologically and physically. On the other hand, it can turn into a vain pursuit to remain young the rest of your life. And we've seen the examples of that in many in the movie business and in Hollywood. They seem to think that they look like they used to, but I have news for them. In any case, the perfect nose is we're still searching for that perfect nose. But on the serious level, the targeted scientists have found a way to stop aging in human cells. Actually, that leads to our wrinkles and so on. They're targeting what they call telomeres, whose length roughly corresponds with age. People think we're getting closer, and new research is sure to bolster that belief. Scientists say they've managed to reverse aging in human cells. We can make aged cells younger. Dr. John Cook, a department chair of cardiovascular science at Houston Methodist Research Institute, Cook's team targeted the telomeres of patient cells, the caps at the end of the chromosomes. Telomeres are a favorite focus of the anti-aging community now. In the new study, Cook's team took the cells from children with progeria, a rare genetic condition that causes them to rapidly age. These children lose their hair, they have osteoporosis, they look drawn and older. This patient group is in desperate need of new life-prolonging treatments. The paper notes that the 12 of the 17 participants in the study aged 1 to 14 years has shortened telomeres, similar to what would be seen in cells from a healthy 69-year-old. Cook's team used a technology called RNA therapeutics, which delivers RNA directly into cells to spur cells to produce telomerase. a protein that lengthens the telomeres. The technique improves cells' lifespan and function. So there's great miracles ahead in aging. Ken?
Dr. Canervo, your choice, plastic surgery or cell therapy?
I'm not sure. I guess I would want to do the cell therapy if, in fact, the procedure were well proven with good results. I'm not a big fan of surgery in general, and I do know of situations where it has turned out to be less than ideal results because of either mistakes done by the doctor or simply there wasn't much to work with to begin with. And so I guess I would try cell therapy simply because it's a newer technique and perhaps might have a more natural result. Ken?
You're listening to U.S. World Report, and we'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to U.S. World Report. I'm Tom Osborne, and today we're talking about aging gracefully. What's the end game? Ken?
Thanks, Tom. This next clip is from the Today Show with Maria Shriver and Bill Gates. And for many families worldwide, this is the unfortunate end game we've been alluding to.
Well, today, 5.5 million Americans and their families struggle with Alzheimer's, a disease that robs people of their memories and their identities. Now, Bill Gates, one of the world's smartest and richest people, is using his brain power and his money to conquer Alzheimer's and finally find a cure.
More and more people are getting Alzheimer's, and it's a tragic disease.
Bill Gates is on a mission. The Microsoft co-founder and billionaire philanthropist is now hoping to solve one of the world's biggest medical mysteries, Alzheimer's disease. He's donating $100 million of his own money to find a cure.
I really believe that if we orchestrate the right resources, it's solvable.
For both of us, this crusade is personal. My father, Sergeant Shriver, passed away from Alzheimer's. Now, for the first time, Gates reveals that his father, 92-year-old Bill Gates Sr., also suffers from the disease.
You had a father, I have a father who's affected deeply by it. Only by solving problems like this can we take these medical costs and the human tragedy and really get those under control.
In 2017 alone, Americans spent $259 billion caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Despite billions more spent on research, we still don't know what causes Alzheimer's or have any effective treatments. You said you spent really a year kind of trying to understand how complex this disease is, how it has eluded everybody, and yet you're still optimistic and feel that you can find a solution.
Yeah, so I'm an optimist, bringing in new ideas. That's what we're going to have to do to have great drugs for this in the next 10 to 15 years.
As co-chair of the world's largest private foundation, Gates is already fighting HIV, polio, and malaria around the world. But this battle is different. He says too many Alzheimer's dollars are going towards mainstream treatments that don't work. That's why 50 of his $100 million donation will go to the Dementia Discovery Fund, an organization that sponsors new, unconventional research into an Alzheimer's cure. To help fast-track new treatments, his other $50 million will fund a national patient registry to speed up recruitment for clinical trials and a global database for Alzheimer's research so scientists can easily share data with each other, something not done today. Do you think you can get people to collaborate, to share?
Yeah, it's very complex. By looking at this data, we can start to understand, are there multiple syndromes here that are slightly different? And, is it different in different races? Is it different for men than women? One of the things we're trying to figure out is when does the Alzheimer's really get started?
You and I are about the same age. I worry about getting Alzheimer's. Do you?
Sure, I want my brain to stay intact as long as possible. I'm learning new areas, meeting super smart people, so it's almost ideal from a exercising the brain muscle point of view.
Tom Osborne, Bill Gates was very successful with HIV/AIDS research. What are your predictions for him in his newest quest to cure Alzheimer's?
Well, it's hard to predict, of course. It's a very complex disease. My mother passed away with it. And I know what it's like to watch a person sort of disappear. But it's nearly impossible to diagnose Alzheimer's disease, and that's the problem. To diagnose Alzheimer's in living people, it's possible to see that someone has died of it, but it's not possible to determine whether you might have it. Time Health writes that name practically any disease or condition that afflicts the human body, and there's probably a good test for detecting it, preferably early, when there's a chance that promising treatments can slow it down or even cure it. Cancer, inherited forms of heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and even certain mental illnesses can be picked up by tracking hormones, genes, or other things circulating in the body. But that has not been the case with Alzheimer's disease, the neurodegenerative condition that was first described in 1906, and more than a century later still does not have a blood test, a brain scan that can diagnose it conclusively. The only way to truly diagnose Alzheimer's is during autopsy, as I said, when doctors can verify the presence of those amyloid plaques and tau tangles they talk about. Bill Gates, who decided to invest his $100 million in the disease research in 2017 and revealed earlier this year that his father was affected by the disease, as Mary and he discussed, is now directing some of that commitment to developing the diagnostic test that the golden grail of this disease cure. The goal, Gates says in a note blog, is to push developments of a real product for real patients by the medical community. The project will solicit and then found the most promising ideas for developing a test for Alzheimer's, whether that be in the form of a blood test, a retinal eye scan, a urine or saliva test, or even some other innovative way of detecting the signs of this disease would certainly be a miracle. And Bill Gates is committing more than $30 million to Diagnostic Accelerator, a project that will do the work to find out how to tell us whether we are affected by it and whether we can be, whether we are able to be cured of it. Ken?
The United States is quickly approaching a historic milestone. By the year 2035, the number of older adults aged 65 and older will exceed the number of children for the first time in American history. Each day, 10,000 people turn 65, and that will continue for years to come. This will impact states and communities and reshape industries. Dr. Canerva, your thoughts on the Alzheimer's disease?
Well, like Tom, I had a family member who had Alzheimer's, and it was a devastating disease, both for him and for the family. I had an uncle with it who ended up losing his longtime marriage. This was 45 years ago, before Alzheimer's became a common term used among elderly people. Unfortunately, he had a problem that led to bizarre behavior, and there was not diagnosed as to what was going on. So my hope is that Bill Gates is very successful, and I applaud his effort to try to find a cure for this disease. Ken?
Well, the potential for an active, healthy older age is tempered by one of the most daunting and potentially costly consequences of ever longer life expectancies, the increase in people with dementia patients eventually needing constant care and help with the most basic activities of daily living, creating a heavy economic and social burden. Prevalence of dementia rises sharply with age. An estimated 25 to 30% of people aged 85 or older have dementia. You're listening to U.S. World Report. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, Miss Mary Saliba, our staff editorialist, will sum things up. So stay with us. Welcome back to U.S. World Report, and this is our show's summary segment, where we get a chance to hear from our news team editorialist, Miss Mary Saliba. Mary?
Thanks, Ken. The world is growing old. How our societies handle it will be clear in the coming decades. In the U.S., the country that brought you the phrase granny dumping, we are a culture that does not respect its elders, as in, say, China and Latin America. Facing the complex emotional challenges of aging without letting our elders guide us, we're just winging it. Our movies celebrate youth, especially women, A romantic leading lady has a 7-year lifespan compared to 47 for men. Models often segue into the self-help business, and we buy it, as though Christy Brinkley's diet will make us beachy blonde and sort of married to Billy Joel. We have 35-year-olds buying advice from 50-year-olds on how to be happy at 80. We're also aging online, where our imperfect lives are pitted against the filtered Instagram feed of everybody else's. When I was younger, an old poet told me never to compare my timeline with anybody else's. In a world of 7 billion people, it does seem ridiculous to pluck one of them out for comparison. More than ever, we must quiet the chatter of the artificial lives surrounding us and feed our real life, what and who we love, the limitless of our minds when we let go of false restraints. We've lived through broken-hearted days, joy, disease around us and in us, grief. It takes a certain grace to embrace whatever this moment is, exactly as it is. Grace that holds within it courage and hope, but not expectation, an agreement with oneself, not a settling for, but a settling into ourselves. Not for kids, this peace, this grace. This has been Mary Saliba for U.S. World Report. Ken?
Thanks, Mary. Dr. Canervo, this is a subject near and dear to all our hearts. What are your final thoughts?
Well, as you mentioned with your statistics, we are an aging population, and this is something which government as well as private industry is going to have to deal with. We're going to need more workers as our population ages and retires. We're going to need more healthcare facilities, more medicines, and perhaps more government support for healthcare so that we don't have large numbers of people who are aged going without health care in their final years. Ken?
Tom Osborne, what are your final thoughts?
Well, Ken and Dave, I chose two of my favorites to close on this fascinating discussion of the end game as opposed to a graceful passing, and they're both from Khalil Gibran. He said, "For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one." And on a similar note, he wrote, "Yesterday is but today's memory. Tomorrow is today's dream." And with that, we're out of time on a subject that will no doubt continue to be discussed without us forever. We value your thoughts and opinions and welcome your visit to our website, usworldreport.org, and please email us at usworldreport.com. Please join us next week for another edition of U.S. World Report with myself, Tom Osborne, Ken McCaleb, our moderator, Dr. David Canervo, our resident historian and political scientist, and of course our editorialist, Mary Saliba. See you next week on U.S. World Report. Thanks for listening.